Hello and welcome to another episode of the Strength Syndicate podcast with myself, Shane Story, and my co-host, Lawrence King. Today we have two very special guests. So today in the podcast we have Anna Hourihane and we have Jayne Jones. So the two girls are Irish international powerlifters, and they're also both registered dietitians and are part of the ABS nutrition team. So they are going to be discussing weight cuts with us today and how to weight cut for powerlifting competitions. But before we get into that, I'll get the girls to introduce themselves first. So Anna, if you want to take it away.
Hi, I'm Anna. So as Shane said, I do some powerlifting and compete internationally. I've been lifting around 7 years now at this stage, so part of ABS furniture now. And then I suppose my background is I did a undergrad in sports science and health, and then did a master's in dietetics. So now I'm working as a registered dietitian in a hospital, and also working with ABS Nutrition with Jayne and Jen Harrington.
Jayne? Very good.
Hi, my name's Jayne.
Second time in the podcast.
Yeah. This is round two. I think I'm going to be a bit more informed about what I'm talking about today, not complete speculation. I'm also a powerlifter. I've only been lifting for 2 years this month, my anniversary. And I represented Ireland for the first time this year, competed internationally. I'm also a registered dietitian. I did my undergraduate in dietetics in DIT in Trinity, and I've been working as a registered dietitian for the past year. I was in an acute hospital setting, but I'm now working as a community dietitian in mental health. And I also work with Anna doing the ABS nutrition coaching. And at the moment, I'm doing a diploma in performance nutrition with the IOPN as well.
Sweet. I'd say you have been pretty run off your feet since August, really, since competition started up again, with the amount of people you're trialing for weight cuts and everything like that, and doing them yourselves as well.
Yeah.
So I suppose to kind of let some listeners know, because there'll probably be some people like listen to the podcast who won't really understand what a weight cut is. So could you, one of you first describe or would define what a weight cut is and maybe why you would do it?
Do I describe it and you want to talk? Okay, so a weight cut, that's kind of like a very broad term. And essentially in powerlifting, you are trying to either make a specific weight category to be able to compete, or in some federations, you might be trying to compete at a lighter body weight to have a more advantageous formula score, so DOT score. So there's kind of a few parts of a weight cut. It's a very broad term. So it can entail like chronic weight loss. So that can be like dieting for a period of time to be in a calorie deficit and lose like body mass as hopefully primarily fat, but also a little bit as muscle, and that would bring your weight down. That's kind of everyone's understanding really of like what weight loss is. And then a weight cut can also include, or it might just be exclusively an acute weight cut, or I prefer to say weight manipulation, because what we're actually doing is manipulating certain factors of your diet and your fluid intake or other things like sweating and heat to make your scale weight lighter. So you weigh in lighter on the scales, but you haven't physically lost any body fat or muscle. We've just manipulated it so that you weigh in lighter on the scale. So some people might do a combination of both. If they're very far off their weight category, they might diet for a couple of weeks first to get themselves in a certain range of their weight category, and then the week usually before competition is where you implement those acute weight manipulation. Some people who sit right above their weight category might just do weight manipulation. Some people don't like to do weight manipulation, so like water loading and water cutting, and they might actually just diet down into their weight class. So I suppose for like the purpose of weight manipulation, that's kind of sitting no more than like 5% over your weight category for a 2-hour weigh-in, and then it can kind of be pushed up to 8 to 10% above the weight you want to be for a 24-hour weigh-in.
And I suppose Jayne already touched upon it, but I suppose the main reason people would do that is to be competitive. So say if someone was trying to achieve records for a certain weight category, or if it meant that they had a competitive advantage against a competitor that they knew they might be fairly close to. So in powerlifting, the load that is lifted, as you know, wins the overall placing. Jayne actually won a competition recently like this, because Jayne and her competitor lifted the same amount of weight and Jayne was lighter, she won overall. So some people will cut weight for that as well. And then if it means they can internationally go and place a medal, they'll do that. Like, there are other reasons why someone might cut weight.
Yeah, and then I think, so for like 2-hour weigh-ins, you're looking at like making a specific weight category.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Like what Anna means there by me being more competitive is kind of tying back to what I said about that 5%. So let's just say, for example, the weight class I compete in, 63, the top lifters like on the elite level would be walking around at like 65, 66 kilos. Yeah. And that allows them to physically carry more muscle mass. Yeah. And then you can manipulate your weight to weigh in under the weight category for that like moment in time that you have to step on the scales, but you're going to have an advantage over someone who only weighs 62 kilos. Because you can carry more muscle mass, and obviously in a sport where you want to lift the most weight, carrying more muscle mass is an advantage. And then I suppose, again, looking at like the other federations like AB series, it's
not a federation.
It's not a federation. Other areas of competing where you have a 24-hour weigh-in, or what I meant by AB series, it's not weight categories. Yeah, it's divisions based on scores, and you might want to reach a certain weight that you know you can hit a certain formula score at to either like win or be promoted up a weight category. So you might know that if you lift this total at this body weight, you get 400 dots. So that's what the competitive advantage of weight cutting is.
Deadly, very comprehensive, and a lot of good stuff that you touched on there. I suppose the first thing that you distinguished was like the difference between, I suppose, weight loss and then like the weight manipulation, which is a pretty important one, because like outside of powerlifting, maybe in the general population, you would have people confusing the two of them some of the time. So I suppose when you're doing your weight manipulation, I suppose one of the things you will be manipulating will be like of carbohydrates to see reduction in body weight. Whereas you could see people do that like on a short stint, like remove all the carbs from their diet and then think that that is weight loss, but it's really just losing muscle glycogen. And then as well with the experience level, like who like a weight cut would be right for. Like again, like would you say the people who you mainly recommend the weight loss approach to will be more kind of entry level lifters, and then maybe weight manipulation more for the competitive, more advanced lifters?
Yeah, and I think like the thing with the weight manipulation is like, you know it yourself, the more you do it, the more refined it becomes, and the more you understand what you respond to better. So some people respond better to water loads, some people don't respond well to a low fiber diet. In general, we say that beginners shouldn't really be focusing on weight cutting. I suppose it's different looking at the point of view if you're starting off in the gym and you want to just like lose weight in general to feel a bit healthier, but certainly for a first competition you should just be picking like a weight category that you naturally fit into, because it's just another thing to have to worry about for your very first competition. And as Anna touched on, the pros have to outweigh the cons. Are you going to win your weight class? Is that what you're trying to do? Do you have a chance of doing that? Do you have a chance to make a qualifying total for a national team? And that's kind of when it gets into the more experience, is like what's the purpose of the weight cut? You should never be just doing a weight cut because you're like, oh, I think I could like lift in that weight category, because there are cons to weight cuts. especially if you're doing, as I said, the dieting point of view, like as much as we want to just lose body fat, if we're in a calorie deficit, you're going to lose a certain percentage of it as muscle mass. You can avoid it to a certain extent, but there will be a small percentage. And then obviously with the acute weight manipulation, you know, things can go wrong. It's something that you have to get right, and beginners are probably more likely to do it without guidance, and definitely don't think you should be doing acute weight cutting methods without guidance.
Yeah.
So it's definitely, I don't think it's something that beginners should be looking into. There should be a purpose as to why you're trying to make a specific weight category or a specific weight.
Yeah. The way I break it down usually is like chronic weight cutting or weight loss, or for those with higher body fat and just want to recomp their body composition. And then the acute, as Jane said, is for that more competitive advantage with the guidance of, you know, a nutritionist or a dietitian or something like that. So yeah, definitely for experienced lifters. Now you do get people who are beginners and actually get quite competitive quite early on. You know, like Jane, for example, went international quite early on, or you have lifters who's fairly new to abs and is just super competitive. So for her to cut as a beginner might make more sense compared to someone who's just learning technique or squatting for the first time, you know. So yeah, I suppose you have to look at the pros and cons on what you're achieving. But generally the chronic is for weight loss, body fat loss, and then acute is for the more advantage for competitive reasons. Yeah.
Very good points there. Yeah. You about to say something, Lawrence?
I was. So if you guys were to kind of give rough, very broad guidelines in terms of maybe starting with, I suppose maybe the chronic weight loss, I suppose maybe for someone that's a beginner, maybe approaching their first meet, what kind of guidelines or at least kind of advice maybe would you kind of, or where would you start someone on that?
I suppose you're trying to look at what they're trying to achieve. So what body fat are they? Are they just looking to lean up a little bit? So I suppose you'd look at their overall calorie intake, maybe meal pattern, protein intake, and, you know, do a small maybe deficit of 300 to 500 kcal. Look at their protein, at least get them at minimum 1.2 grams per kg. And if they're hitting that, maybe slightly higher protein as well, up to around 2.4 grams per kg, no higher really, and just go that way and slowly reduce their calories over time while engaging in their strength exercise.
Yeah, I think as well, like if you're like maybe totally brand new, start tracking your intake, because it's very hard for you to make adjustments to your diet if you don't know what your baseline is. Like some new people coming into the gym, sorry, there's a bit of a power outage here, but we seem to be all right. Some newer people coming into the gym mightn't have a clue how much grams of protein that they're eating in the day. So I would say is, you know, start tracking your meals, get an idea of where you're at. As Anna said, aim for that higher protein. Kind of what I mentioned earlier, when we're in a calorie deficit, we want the majority of weight loss to be as fat, and many studies have shown that consuming a high protein diet when you're in a calorie deficit helps to preserve muscle mass. So I would say track your food, high protein diet, you know, make sure that you're having your 3 meals a day and fueling your training right. I think what a lot of people get wrong when they're dieting is totally stripping back calories and they just don't feel good in the gym. Make sure that you're having, you know, a solid meal with carbohydrates before your training and after your training, so that you can fuel, because there's really no point in, you know, cutting calories out of your diet and then your performance goes down in the gym. You're just not going to have a good competition. So it's really just the basics. Another basic is, you know, look how much are you eating out, you know, and alcohol intake all majorly contribute calories to the diet. So those would be the main things, I think. Tracking protein and try to reduce how much you're relying on food out and things like that.
Just general diet quality.
Yeah,
I think definitely with like trying to eat as many calories as you can while losing weight is like a good thing to do if you're like to improve sport performance. Like, as you said, there is so many people who, when they think of weight loss, they think of, all right, now all the carbs and go from my plate, and all the like bad food goes as well. And then that's just a recipe for disaster, because adherence lasts for like 1 or 2 weeks. And they're back to square one. You know, it didn't work. Dieting didn't work for me. So yeah, definitely, I will 100% agree. Like, you should try your hand at tracking, and if you can't do it yourself, 100% get somebody to help you to do it, because like it does work, you know.
And the good thing about tracking is the good thing about tracking is it versus like meal plans and things like that. I think if you start tracking like your calories, you actually learn about your nutrition. You learn, oh, low-fat Greek yogurt is high in protein, and rice is high in carbohydrates, and avocados are high in fat. And you start to learn about what foods contribute what to your diet, and it gives you a better understanding. And as you said there, like, so many people make the mistake of cutting out carbs, cutting out treat foods, when like all of those foods can take up a part of our diet. And that's why, like, as I said, like, setting macro targets and calorie targets can be good, because it shows that you can still fit those foods into your diet. But yeah, as you said, if you really don't have a clue, kind of reach out for guidance from others.
But like, I do think tracking isn't for everyone. Like, I hate tracking.
That's totally
And in that scenario, you can look at someone's meal compositions and structure and give advice based on that then as well. You know, some people just aren't tech savvy or just don't like the numbers of tracking, so there's ways around that as well.
It's about kind of like establishing the diet pattern, because obviously if you are able to do that for general weight loss, then if you're ever thinking about doing diet manipulation, like for the weight cut, it makes it so much easier, because you're not reintroducing like new foods in that kind of period. So do you want to touch a little bit on that side of things? So like the week before the competition.
So like the acute weight cut, is it?
Yeah, we can start getting into like what are you manipulating? So if during weight loss you're just looking to manipulate the calorie deficit, like establish that, like, you know, reduce your calories through carbs and fats, high protein, like how are you achieving the actual acute weight manipulation without actually losing body fat?
Do you want me to talk about water and you can talk about fiber and food density? So a major thing that people would do, is quite common practice in powerlifting, would be water loading. It's called a water cut. I don't think that's the best description for it, because it's not just a water cut, it's a water load followed by a water cut, and then also manipulating your salt with that. So essentially it's increasing your fluid intake drastically over a certain period of days. And what this does, it manipulates certain hormones in your body. So it down regulates aldosterone and antidiuretic hormone, and they're involved with urinating, peeing. So when antidiuretic hormone is high, it helps with water resorption, and it tells your body not to pee. So if you down regulate those, you're going to be peeing a lot, because you're drinking a lot of water. And then we would say to increase your salt with this period as well. So you'd load your salt up as well. And that kind of further helps to manipulate that hormone cycle. And then what happens is a day or two out, you will drastically drop your water intake. So it might be back to 1 liter or 2 liters, less than what your usual water intake is. And there's kind of a gap between when you drop your water intake and those hormones upregulating again. So what happens is you will continue to excrete water at a higher rate, similar to how you were when you're drinking lots of water, but you're not putting as much in anymore. So you essentially dehydrate yourself. And that will help to drop your weight, because you're dehydrating, you're losing water weight. But it's very easy, it's very manageable. It's just drinking more water, adding more salt, and then cutting down the water and salt again. But what's really important in that, and I suppose we'll probably get into that later, is making sure you get the water and the salt back in again afterwards, because obviously dehydration has profound effects on performance.
Yeah, so that would be one of the strategies. Another thing that we might look at is manipulating your fiber. So likewise, in the first kind of 3 days of your week out for a comp, you'll increase your fiber, maintain it around 30 grams. If you need to increase it a little bit more, you will. So the reason behind that is just to kind of slow down your gut. Give me the word for it, I can't remember.
Motility,
that was it. Slow down your gut motility. And then 3 days or 4 days out, you might slowly start reducing your fiber. So we might have you around 10 grams of fiber. And when you have high fiber, you have increased basically food weight in your gut. And then by reducing that, you're essentially just trying to reduce the weight in your gut. We don't see massive changes in your body weight, but it can help with your last few grams to make your body weight. Also with fiber, you can hold water. So by reducing your fiber again, you're kind of helping that excretion of the water that Jayne spoke about. So it's just working together with the gut weight and then also with the fluid excretion as well.
Yeah, I think as well what you're saying there, I think how well the fiber and food weight works for you depends on what your baseline diet is like if you're someone who's eating a lot of like whole grains and you eat a lot of like fruits and vegetables, if you like cut those down, and what's important to make a point there is you don't change the energy intake of your diet, you're just changing the foods that provide those calories. You're probably going to see much of a bigger difference compared to someone who already eats like a low enough fiber diet or kind of like an energy dense diet, which we would see with maybe like, guys would technically tend to eat like a lot of like energy dense food because they have higher calorie requirements. So it's really important, is that what your baseline diet, people who eat high fiber diets and do that, like some people can lose up to like 0.6 to 0.8 of a kg, but again it depends on what you're starting off with.
It kind of ties in as well in the week out as well. You might start reducing your carbohydrate intake, but still trying to keep that calorie range. Some people will have a calorie deficit, but we tend to try keep the calories as high as possible so you can keep your energy. So what you might find is the fat throughout the week starts to slowly increase while the carbs start coming down. So you're basically just depleting your glycogen and also trying to reduce that water again. So there's around 3 grams or milligrams of water held with a gram of glycogen. So again, you're just trying to manipulate everything to get the last of your body weight down in those acute phase.
And what you'll find as well is higher fat food, again, it's higher calorie density. So if when you let's just say you're on 2,000 calories and you drop your carbs and you increase your fat to be at the same calories, you're going to be physically eating less food, because fat is the most calorie dense macronutrient. It's 9 calories per gram versus carbohydrate, which has 4 calories per gram. So again, you're dropping your food weight further. So you're decreasing the carbs, which decreases the glycogen. Water goes with that, and like bearing in mind your glycogen stores, like you can have like 500 grams of glycogen in your muscle stores, and then you're going to have the water go with that, and then as I said, you're further reducing the food density by having the higher fat in it as well.
Okay, all good stuff there. So kind of we're hearing water kind of very easily kind of done. What would be your kind of go-to for people? What's the strategy you see is showing most efficacy with the people you've worked with?
I like a combination. I feel you can initiate more from a combination. I don't like to be too drastic with one personally, because then you're playing catch up then within that 2-hour weigh, and we mostly work with 2-hour weigh, and obviously with a 24-hour weigh, and you have more time to replenish. But by using a combination, you're not being as kind of severe with any one of them, and then you can kind of replenish a little bit easier while still getting the results. And then I suppose it's personal preference for the person as well. Like some people might find, I can't function on a low carb, so we might focus maybe more on the water load aspect then. The
hierarchy too, I suppose, depending on how much weight you have to lose. So we have very lovely spreadsheet where we type in what you need to weigh and how much weight you have to lose, and it will generate like what strategies we actually need to use. So for example, like someone who's sitting like right above their weight category, again, I'm going to use 63s, maybe you're 62.2 or 63.3 or something. You probably just need to manipulate your diet. You probably just need to lower your fiber, lower your food density, cut food off a little bit early, and you'll weigh in lighter. Versus if you're 64 and a half, you're probably going to have to do a water like load on top of that. So the greater weight you have to lose, the more aggressive you have to go with the manipulation. I suppose we didn't get into as well, you know, I talked about dehydration via water cuts. We didn't really talk about how you can do dehydration via sweating methods. It's not really something that myself and Anna do. I suppose we would kind of look at those more like aggressive things if it's the morning of and you haven't made weight and you're like 200 grams over. You might need to sit in the car with your hoodie and the heating on while you drive to the competition to try and lose that couple 100 grams. The thing with sweating and heat is, obviously they touched on there, dehydration affects your performance, but heat exposure on top of that fatigues your central nervous system. So if you've got dehydration and heat fatigue, it's a little bit harder to bounce back on. I feel like sweating and those heat induced methods are used a lot more in 24-hour weigh-ins than they are in 2-hour weigh-ins, because again, you have 24 hours to put it all back in. Another one, we're just getting to spitting. I
was only talking to a client about that during the week, and she generally couldn't believe like that was an actual thing. I was like, yeah.
People are horrified. They're like, sorry, what? You would put, so what spitting is, you would put either sour jellies or chewing gum or something that makes you salivate into your mouth and spit into a cup. It's actually disgusting. It's efficient in the way that you can see like, oh, I've spit out 100 grams. But I'd only be recommending that if you are like 100 grams over, because it's not very nice. Or things like running around in bin bags and things like that. You know, we want to try minimize as much of that as possible. You want to do the manipulation the whole week of, and ideally you wake up in the morning, you've already made weight, and you start eating and drinking before you weigh in.
I suppose what I'm hearing is don't get too far away from your target weight.
You need to be realistic. You need to be realistic, and you need to be realistic about timelines as well. Like, because if you are, you know, couple of like a good few kilos over, you're gonna have to do that chronic diet first. As I said, for 2-hour weigh-in, we say like 5%. So just to put that again into context, I'm going to use my own weight category. That's 66.15 kilos for a 63 kilo category is the most you want to be cutting acutely for a 2-hour weigh-in. As I said, that can kind of go up to 8 to 10% for the 24-hour, because you have the longer period to put it back in. But if you're, let's just say you're 70 kilos and you want to be 63, you're going to have to diet for a couple of weeks first, and then you're going to have to do your acute methods. Because otherwise, if you try to lose it all with dehydration, spitting, food, you're going to feel like crap, and you're not going to be able to lift the weight, you know.
Your competitive advantage is gone.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you do have people like messaging us 2 weeks before, be like, oh, I'm 5 kilos above your weight class. And you're like, no, don't look at me.
So how much of this is kind of, I won't say dependent, but how much would body composition kind of contribute to someone's ability to for that acute weight loss? I'm assuming for someone that would be very lean, and if you're looking at them and they're maybe like 2 or 3 kilos versus someone that's carrying a bit more body fat, the person carrying a bit more body fat would obviously be in a little bit more advantageous of a position.
Absolutely.
I'm assuming maybe.
Like, I suppose if you're looking at the greater picture of that, someone who's very lean and they're trying to cut to a weight category below them, you have the capacity to to go up a weight category, you know, and you're probably actually restricting your progress. So that's where the point where it's, if you're like extremely lean and you're trying to cut like 2 or 3 kilos to get to a weight class below you, you would actually probably be more competitive if you went up a weight category, because if you gain weight, you're going to be able to lift more weight, hopefully. But you have to, when you're considering whether you're going to do a weight cut or not, you have to consider things like how stressful is going through that weight cut for you. Are you always in a situation where it's 10 weeks out from comp, you're 6 or 7 kilos over, you have to diet, you have to do extreme like water cutting, weight cutting, and you just don't enjoy it, and it's just extremely difficult for you? If it's getting to a point where it's very, very difficult for you to make weight, you need to consider whether it's worthwhile going up your weight category or not.
Yeah, no, that to me that makes a lot of sense, because I suppose we've all kind of anecdotally heard of people that would be quite lean, and they're kind of turning around to you, telling you they're doing a water cut or a water load and 1,000 calorie deficit the week before the comp, and things don't go their way then.
You see them at weigh-ins and they're like the Walking Dead.
Yeah, I will never forget, I don't know if you're at Nationals, Maeve Murtagh, I think it was 2018. She is so lean and she cut down to 52 kilos and she looked so malnourished. I don't know how she performed that day. It was incredible. But like, yeah, she was just, it was magic how she even lifted a weight that day. Like, it was insane.
Yeah. I suppose then, go on, Shane.
But you go.
The next thing I suppose I'm curious about, so let's say I walk around at, I'm just going to pick myself, let's say I walk around at about 115, 120 kilos, and I water cut down to 110. I weigh in, I have a 2-hour weigh in. What do I do from there? Do I just start banging in water, banging in salt, and hope to Jesus that I can hold things together until I hit my openers, or what do I do?
Can we say the next scenario as well be if you were doing a 24-hour weigh-in?
Let's start with 2 and then
so start with 2. So
yeah, good question. I suppose the main focus at that stage is to rehydrate yourself, because obviously being in a state of dehydration, you are, as Jayne said, stressing your not only just your like muscle contraction stuff, but also your CNS, so your perceived exertion. So yeah, banging in the water probably isn't the best strategy, but I suppose you do want to replenish the water loss that you've experienced. So generally what we would say is for every kilo lost, you'd replenish by 1.5. But also you need to replenish the sodium
and electrolytes.
Sodium being probably the most important one there. As Jayne said, you know, in regards to your hormone cycle and everything, it's just about retaining that water. So there's no point to sprinkle loads of water and then you're just going to pee it all out. So you do need to retain it. So percentage of sodium is usually around 5 to 7 milligrams per kg. So around 8% of the fluid that you're having. So yeah, that would be the main thing. It's important not to have it too fast as well, because you will just probably vomit, or else it will just fly through you as well. So it is important that you do it over the space of that 2 hour before competition. Anything else to add?
Yeah, I suppose just kind of, I suppose, caution, which is going in with water. You're dehydrated. If you just go in with water, you're actually at risk of being hyponatremic, which is like dangerous for your brain. Yeah. So like when people come into hospital and they put them on a drip, they put them on NaCl, which is sodium. So it's a saline solution. So you want to be looking at things like Diorolite. You can get electrolyte tablets, salt tablets, like the oral rehydration solution, sports drinks like Lucasade, Powerade, those sort of things. I would say Diorolite is probably better because it's more kind of medical. It's actually designed for dehydrated people. Yeah. It's designed to rehydrate. And again, what Anna said, pace yourself. I drank 2 liters of water with 2 packs of Diorolite and I almost puked my guts up. I did not feel good. It actually happened. Amanda Lawrence at Worlds, I think she said she just like a liter of orange juice with salt in it, and she drank it really quickly, and she like vomited everywhere, and then she couldn't keep anything down whatsoever. So your main thing is your fluid, and trying to get yourself as close as the weight that you were before you cut out the water, and then getting food into you as well. You want to kind of go with food that is well tolerated, that you're used to. Don't be trying anything fancy or new on comp day. Like if you always go in for your squats and you have a bowl of porridge, bring your porridge with your protein powder, put a banana in it for a bit of potassium, and then maybe put a little bit of extra salt on it as well because you're dehydrated. Try to get a meal in after you weigh in, and then your fluid then in the 2 hours before you weigh in.
Cool. Is there any kind of bad experiences you've had on 2 hour weigh-ins, or good experiences, things you've kind of done arse ways?
Wow.
Anna's cut more than I have.
I don't know why, but Jay seems to have this effect on me that if he tells you to do something, you're like, okay, I'll do it. So anyway, ab series 7, I was like, I'm not going to cut weight. I'm just going to go in strong, be grand. So I weighed in at 53 kilos the day before, which was a 24-hour weigh-in. And he's like, you are heavy, cut down 52 and come back in not fat. And I was like, okay, grand. So anyway, I don't know how, but I like somehow lost most of the kilo. I had to spit in the car, had like a plastic bag on me. Yeah, it was horrendous. So anyway, I think
I remember this.
Yeah, I looked horrendous.
You looked like, you actually looked like you were at that store. I actually remember this. Yeah.
Coffin was ready for me. And so yeah, it was just absolutely horrendous. And I don't recommend it at all. I probably had around 6 spoons of Nutella, only had liquid meals, like tried to get down the weight. So yeah, I don't recommend. Don't do that 24 hours. Decide to do a full acute cut 24 hours.
I think it's also for anybody just listening to this as well. You are a micro human. Just for people to I think you walk around at like 54 kilos, did you say, or something? Yeah. So I think like as an amount of body weight to lose like a kilo when you barely have that kilo to lose is
it wasn't a good idea.
And that's actually a really good point as well, is that like I suppose a kilo has much more of an effect on someone smaller, like Anna versus like Lawrence, yourself dropping a kilo. It's a much like lower percentage of your body weight. So I think you need to take that into account for lighter lifters, like the 47s, 52s, 57s,
63s.
63s.
Yeah.
The effect it'll actually
definitely
have on someone.
Yeah.
I suppose,
or like you'll have people as well, like I remember Shannon telling me before, like using laxatives as well to lose some weight.
Christ.
Not pleasant. So
no,
absolutely not. And you're further dehydrating yourself as a result as well.
It'll dehydrate you. You'll lose a load of electrolytes, and you'll also feel like crap because you're going to be going to the bathroom for the whole day
or night as well.
And you don't like, it is an effective way, I suppose, but it's not good. You're not going to feel good, and you're just not going to have good performance because you're going to have to be
and generally what you'll find is when you start eating post weigh-in as well, that laxative effect is still there. So you're running.
I was about to say, you're just praying to fucking Jesus that those laxatives have worn off as soon as you start warming up.
They do.
They
take a few hours to kick in, and I don't think people think that laxatives are like suppositories or enemas, which pretty much make you go like straight away. But laxatives have a slow effect. Like most, like me and Anna have worked in hospitals, most elderly people take a little Movicol before they go to bed. It helps their bowels move in the morning time. So if you're panicking taking laxatives the night before, it might still be kicking into you after your weigh-ins, and you're just going to be losing. So would not recommend.
Yeah, okay, that's a no to the shit in the bed. Okay, right. So
that one off the list.
24-hour weigh-in. So you did say the relative percentage of the amount of body weight someone's going to lose is going to increase slightly. So you're giving your threshold kind of at 5%, and Jane was saying, that could bump anywhere from up to 8 to 10%, obviously dependent on the person's body composition and how much they're just willing to suffer, I suppose, to get down, and how much the potential benefit is there. But so let's say I have done an absolute mother and father of a weight cut. I've gotten down to 100 kilos, very dehydrated, very low fiber intake. Where do I start? So at 24 hours post weight, or just immediately post weight?
It's the same to start.
Yeah,
it really is the same to start. Is getting your fluid back in. Again, pace yourself, because if you cut that much weight, you probably feel horrible. Step on the scale and you feel pretty rotten. So it's just getting that rehydration, the same that we talked about, the 2 hour weigh-in. And I suppose then with the 24-hour weigh-in, what you're actually looking is like later on that you can like have a really calorie dense meal, you know, and just be kind of snacking on foods. Don't overdo it. Like I've heard of people who've done 24-hour weigh-in and then they've absolutely pretty much had a binge afterwards, and you're just not going to feel good the next day. So do pace yourself, but get that fluid back in. I just wanted to touch on that. I've seen a lot in America, people are getting drips.
IV drips. Well, I think
drips?
It's
not approved by WADA.
It's not approved by WADA, so you can only do an untested federation. I would say it's probably unnecessary. If anything, a drip would be more benefit if you had to rehydrate quickly. So it would probably actually be more beneficial for someone who's a 2 hour weigh-in. I don't really think it's that necessary. So I would say just stick with your electrolytes and your water to get that fluid back into you after.
We're saying the same kind of sodium kind of guidelines.
Yeah, absolutely. And then like having meals throughout the day regularly, and then carbohydrate, adding a little bit of extra salt if needed as well. So,
salt up your meals.
Yeah. I love the salt and vinegar crisps. That's my go-to.
Crisps are a nice one after weighing. They are,
Pringles, okay, noted. So then kind of I don't know, Shane, was it kind of meat day food, meat day nutrition? Day.
What do you eat on meat day? So you'd maybe start with like, obviously before the meet. Well, I suppose with 2 hour weigh-in, it's gonna be, you're already gonna have a bit of that covered. But like, what would you eat typically during the meet? Like,
can I start off by saying, if you wake up under your weight category, eat before you go to weigh-ins. Have something. If you wake up and you're like me and you're like 3 kilos into your weight category, have breakfast, start eating and drinking as soon as you can. I think this is an important point to make, and I think it's a mistake that a lot of people make, is if that they're a good bit under, they don't start refueling themselves. And that's again, I think that's particularly important for a 2 hour weigh-in, where actually the most important thing is just you weighing in under your weight category, versus if you're doing a 24-hour weigh-in for dots, you probably actually just want to be as light as you possibly can be. You need to be under your weight category. That's kind of it at the end of the day. So if you wake up and you're under, have a light breakfast, something like, you can have like scrambled eggs and like a piece of toast, or you could weigh out cereal. And then what we usually say to do is, like, you can sip on fluids, and you should re-weigh yourself. And something that a lot of people do, and I know I've done it as well, is like you'd eat little things like, do you know, like cereal bars or like Squares bars? You can actually physically step on the scale with that and see how much you're going to weigh, how much addition that's going to have to your body weight. So I'd say eat, check your weight, see if you can have a little bit more, check your weight, then you weigh in, you do your water, and as I said there, then you need to have a meal. Again, something that you usually have. It could be oats, it could be a bagel, something carby. You can have your protein. It's probably not the most important thing on the day, but you're used to having it. And your salt. And then do you want to talk about, like, as you're getting into warm-ups and stuff?
Yeah, so another thing you might consider is caffeine. So usually it's like peak onset would be 15 minutes, so it can range to 30 to 120 minutes. So I usually tell people, once they start warming up, 30 minutes before they're going to hit the platform, have whatever caffeine in whatever solution they're going to have. Some people take caffeine tablets or just Americano, whatever. So have your caffeine or Monster can, whatever. And then I do tell people to like eat throughout the competition, but I suppose you should have had the majority of your meal at that post weigh-in, and then just having things like bananas, maybe a wee sandwich or something in between squat and bench, chocolate milk, something like that, something that you know you'll be able to digest, nothing too different that what you'd normally have. So I suppose the main fuel source at this stage is just getting your carbohydrates in. So something that's simple, easy to digest, and going to, you know, act quickly. I often recommend as well the glucose tablets as well, because they're very fast acting, and just have something like that throughout your competition. It's, you know, competitions usually only last 2 to 3 hours, so you know you don't need to be having 3 big meals at that stage. So just stuff that you know you'll be easily have. So yeah.
And a lot of people, I know I made the mistake before, I think it was when we did our uni's Corona Cup, I ate so much food. I thought the more food the better. I was like donut, like sandwich, and again you will end up going to the toilet a lot, because you're taking a lot of caffeine as well, and that does help with your gut motility, and you've rehydrated yourself. So more is not better. I'd say, like, some people make that mistake. You're probably going to be quite nervous as well, and that can affect your appetite
and your gut motility.
So like what we said there, meal post weigh-in, have your caffeine, have like a glucose tablet, a banana, energy gels, jellies as you're warming up. In between squat and bench, we say then to try have, as I said there, like a sandwich, because it's usually like well tolerated. And that's important to have that to keep you going all the way through your deadlifts, because if you kind of miss out on that there, you can crash as you're getting into deadlifts. And I would say as well, I am personally a fan of splitting the caffeine between caffeine pre-squats and then taking another little bit of caffeine pre your deadlifts as well. And again, keeping going with like the jellies, bananas, energy gels. You want high carbs, easy to digest. So nothing really high in fiber, nothing too high in fat, because fat slows the release of food from the stomach, and obviously you want it to get into your bloodstream quickly. Sipping on fluids, I personally like to sip on like a Lucozade, because again, you're getting sugar, you're getting electrolytes in, just kind of little bits to keep you going.
And I do think as well the meal is important, as Jane said, because I think some people think, oh, comp day, it's just about jellies, just about Monster, sugar. But you will crash. So it is really important that you have that steady kind of
slow release. You want to get your slow release in at the start and before bench. So that's ticking away in the background, and then you're topping that up with your little kind of quick release, high sugar stuff.
I find before any meet, I'm kind of trying to, I don't know about you, but I can't eat, like
you lose your appetite.
So I'm kind of force myself to eat something quite substantial, maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours out. And then I'll kind of, what did I have last time? I genuinely think I went through 8 squares bars throughout the whole, like between starting to warm up for squat, and by the time I was finished, genuinely started just banging them even between lifts.
They're great.
And I had Jesus, what was it? It was like an apple, lime and strawberry juice. I think I was drinking 2 liters of that.
I do like the juice. I'm a big fan of the juice as
personally,
well.
I don't like juice, but it is a great option.
It gets calories and fluid into you. I survived on junior nationals there. I was able to stomach a sandwich and crisps after weighing, but I solidly survived on like 2.5 liters of Lucozade Sport and a bag of Skittles. I did have something terrible, but I had something before bench, but like sometimes you just have to go with what you're going to be able to tolerate. Don't force feed yourself.
No, don't. I do find as well, just from personal experience, I don't know if there's any evidence behind it, but try not to have dry foods, because if you've water cut, you might still find that you have a bit of dry mouth, so it can be quite difficult to say have something like rice cakes. You're just like, you can feel like you have a bit of a cotton mouth. So I genuinely think like having chocolate milk and a sandwich is just such a good option to have during that mid kind of comp meal.
And milk is very hydrating as well.
Exactly. So
and
it's a great option.
We all know that chocolate milk is just nutritionally superior.
And
We don't need
tasty.
we don't need any science.
Yeah, yeah.
I think Mujo is going to be on the WADA 2022 so
anabolic cow juice.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We also forgot to mention, sorry, in the weight cut, creatine.
Yes.
We usually will stop people around 2 weeks out just because it can hold water as well. So it's another great way to drop that water weight. Sorry, we forgot to mention that.
Like I've seen people, I think Dern lost like 2
2
kilos
yeah,
when she came off creatine.
Yeah.
So it just, when you increase your creatine stores, you pull a bit of water into the muscle as well. That's why some people, my mom was like, creatine's going to make you gain weight. Creatine will, in the short term, increase your water weight. So it's another way to drop it. And if you have cut creatine, put that in with your electrolytes in your water after you weigh in.
Yeah. And a good general like gauge to how much you'll lose from it is just take a note of when you do start taking it, how much of your body weight goes up. Generally, it's just water weight, so you'll drop that easily.
And you strip that 2 weeks before?
Yeah, generally 2 weeks before. Yeah,
it takes me 2 weeks to drop. I usually, if I cut it a week, I don't see the effect. Can take a little bit longer. I'd say about 2 weeks.
And it won't have performance like
in
impact,
the short term.
Yeah, in the short term. So it's more of a kind of build up effect that the creatine will have. So on the day you won't see any loss of strength as a result of cutting your creatine.
Yeah, I suppose you've made all the adaptations coming up to that. So
exactly, yeah.
One day won't kill you.
Unless your weight cut has gone to shit and you end up.
That's not going to be the creatine. That will be your shite weight cut.
Yeah.
or not just your shite weight cut, your shite recomp.
Yeah.
Cannot highlight the importance enough of that, like post weigh-in.
Yeah.
You know, so many people are like, I've done it, I've made weight, like we did it, and then they completely forget the post. And I do think like the post has just as much of an effect on your performance, if not more, than the cut. And that's the skill of learning weight cuts, is you want to make weight like just that moment that you step on the scale, and then you want to just weigh that for like a half an hour. You don't want to be no more. Like you don't want to be at that weight for a long time. So eating, drinking, the recomp is just as important as the cut. And I think that's where
people go
wrong. And I think that's where having a plan helps. Like we would personally, for everyone, would write out like, what time is your weigh-in, and then literally write, do this, have this, and they just have to follow it step by step.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I suppose even having a track of like their average training weight through prep probably as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So like that's why another thing is that we don't like people coming to us like a few days before their comp, because we don't know what weight they've been training at. We don't know their habitual, dietary, behaviors or anything like that. So it is important that you do get that coach, at minimum 3 weeks, 4 weeks out from your competition.
Yeah, and I think that as well, that's the like importance of like, if you pick like a coach and you do a weight cut with them, like coming back to that coach, like consistently doing weight cuts with the same coach helps you like learn about them. Like we've personally had people who come to us who we've actually told them to go to a coach they were previously with, who's cut weight with them before, especially if it's like if they had like a severe weight cut, because you will learn more each time about what you can do, and they will learn as well, like how much you drop. Like I've had someone come to me before 2 weeks out, and they dropped like 3 kilos off like the like loading water and changing their food. Like so they were like well under before comp, but it takes that. So now we know the next time, okay, you can actually sit heavier. We can have you sit a little bit higher and drop you down from there.
We don't need to go severe the next time.
We don't need to go severe, everything like that. So I think that's the importance of working with the coach, but building that relationship over time as well. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So get a coach. I think most of these podcasts kind of finish
ending that. Yeah, in fairness. Yeah.
I actually have one more point that I would like to make.
You knock yourself out, yeah.
What you gonna say?
Yeah.
I feel agree here. Like I feel like a lot of people who come into competition, especially if it's your first competition and you're under your weight category, please eat. Like,
yeah.
if you've already made weight like the week of and you're like a kilo under your weight category, like I've met people who's their first time competing and they're like, oh God, like just have to be careful this week to make sure that like I do like make weight, and like looking at like water and salt and stuff like that. If you walk around, like personally for me coming into junior nationals, I was weighing 62 kilos all the time. I didn't change a thing the week competition. I actually tried to eat a little bit more, so that was fueled coming into competition. So I think that's a mistake a lot of new people can make, is thinking because they see other people doing weight cutting that they have to change their diet the week before comp. Eat what you always eat. If you're at weight and you're at comp weight, I wouldn't change a thing. If anything, if you have the room, have a little bit more, you know, try to fuel yourself for comp, because that's a disadvantage that people who have to do weight cuts have, is that they can't like
eat as normal.
They can't eat as normal. For some people, we have to drop their carbohydrate stores a little bit. And obviously, you know, we even made an Instagram post today about how important carbohydrates are for powerlifting performance. So if you don't have to worry about making weight, don't
change anything.
Making weight, pretty much.
Yeah, like the last competition I did was the first time I ever cut weight, like, and I didn't even really need to do it, you know, the kind of way.
Yeah.
And all the other competitions, I was looking at other people having to do their water cuts and cutting carbs for a week. And I was like, I don't have to do any of that shit. It's great.
Yeah, like it is stressful. It's stressful on the body and the mind. Yeah, you know.
So if you don't have to worry about it, don't be worrying about it.
Yeah, like I definitely, like personally, I wouldn't do one for the 2 hour weigh-in. Like personally.
Yeah. But like as we said, like you have to weigh up the pros and cons.
Yes.
You know, if you can avoid it, absolutely avoid it.
Yeah.
You know.
So something I kind of think about sometimes, like, how do people who have normal jobs do the water load? Like, say, like I do water load because I sit at my desk at home all day and I could just chug at water all day. But in an office environment and you're trying to drink 10 liters of water a day, and you're going to the bathroom every 20 minutes, like.
Yeah, absolutely. I just started a job actually. Well, I'm there a few months, but I was telling them that I'm doing Euros, and I was like, by the way, I will be water loading. So if you find that I'm going to the toilet all the time, it's because of this.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's so difficult, and I suppose those are factors that you need to take into consideration as well.
Yeah, whether you have your physical capacity, but whether you actually have the mental capacity and the time to take on a weight cut as well is a big thing. It's a huge commitment.
Yeah.
Like that week of.
And that's also like another thing that we would consider is, are you traveling for your competition as well?
Yeah, I suppose we didn't really touch on that, but like travel can really impact from the point of view that some people can retain water after they fly, but then also like you're in a far country and like where do you get Lucozade? What do they call Lucozade here? Like where do you get the food?
You're familiar with.
You sound like you're speaking from experience here when you say, what do they call Lucozade here?
the shop beside the hotel.
I need orange sugar liquid fast.
No, they sold out of Powerade and White Monsters because there was a shop right beside the hotel for Worlds, and obviously everybody flipping wanted Power King, I think it was called, and White Monster, and they sold out of it and we couldn't get any of it before we competed. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Orange sugar liquid, please.
I remember another time I went to Worlds and I was like, I'm going to be super prepared, and I brought around 10 cans of tuna, and I actually don't think I could ever eat tuna again, like ever.
No.
Yeah, so traveling is a huge consideration.
Yeah, I don't think many will be traveling for me. Well, I suppose unless people are doing Euros or Worlds, but that's only a very small percentage of powerlifters will ever have to deal with flights. Anything else?
I don't know. I think we've covered most things.
So don't get too fat above or too much above
or too small
or too lean.
Yeah, don't be too lean trying to lose weight.
Yeah.
Don't take laxatives.
Yeah.
Do rehydrate slowly.
Yeah.
Do not change your food.
Yeah.
That's assuming though you have good practices as well for your performance.
Yeah, you might need to change your food if you're not eating the best.
Yeah.
But don't do anything new on comp day.
Yeah.
Do add salt frequently when rehydrating, and that's pretty much the gist of what I've taken away.
I think that pretty much covered everything. So with that then, could you tell our two listeners, Connor and Ian, where they can find you, and where they can find you if they want to learn more about some nutrition and that kind of stuff. So Anna, take it away.
If they're looking for nutrition coaching, go to the ABS Powerlifting website and click join us, go down to the nutrition handle, and then if you want to look myself and Jayne up personally on Instagram, I'm at POW_AH, and Jayne is,
I am Jayne, Jayne, Jayne with a Y, Jones with 2 S's.
not complicated at all.
Or you can also.
It's not even funny. I don't know why you're laughing.
No. And then you can also find some nutrition posts on the ABS Powerlifting Instagram page as well.
Yeah, we promise we'll be more frequent.
Yeah, check out our new post on carbs.
Ideal. Right. I'll link all your stuff in the show notes anyway, and on the Instagram post.
Thanks for having us.
All right. So yeah, thank you very much for coming on. And if you enjoyed the podcast, make sure to share it on Instagram and leave a review on whatever kind of platform you listen to it on.
Do we have any reviews?
Not yet. So if you leave us,
you know what? We'll leave you a review.
You could review us. That'd be great. Yeah. That'd be something.
So yeah, thank you very much for listening, and we'll catch you in the next one.